Wow, thanks for that great introduction. I hope we live up to it.
We'd better. No, we're very, very happy that all of you came out tonight to help us celebrate Silent Thunder. The books mean so much to us. We've been trying for years to find a plot that we thought that we could do together and do it well. And then, one day, my son came back from Chicago. Just want to make sure they can hear you. Are they having trouble hearing? We okay? Then one day, my son came back from Chicago and said, "Mom, have you ever written about a submarine?" And I said, "Son, I'm not Tom Clancy." But then he explained what he meant, and I became excited.
What happened is I went to a wedding in Chicago, and I spent a day at the Museum of Science and Industry there, where they have a captured German submarine that was captured by U.S. forces during World War II. And it's amazing to see because it looks just as it did that day in 1942 when they boarded it. There are, as you walk in, there are chewing gum wrappers that were under the gratings that some German soldier peeled off, one day over 60 years ago. And it's perfectly preserved. It's just fascinating to see. And even more interesting to me was the process by which they came to get this sub. And we started talking about that whole thing. And we kind of crafted a story about a young woman who's overseeing the acquisition of a Russian submarine. We decided to make it a Cold War submarine so that some of the players could still be alive. And we started thinking about, what if we had a story where she discovers a secret about it that catapults her into a big adventure? And we played a game of what if, as writers often do. And the story started getting bigger and bigger, and we started getting more and more excited about it. And by the time we finished talking about it, we both knew we had to write it. And that's what we did. And neither one of us had ever collaborated with anyone before, much less with a close family member. And so it was an interesting process trying to figure out how we were going to do this. It's fairly common for screenwriters to collaborate. I come from screenwriting. The first 10 years of my career, I worked exclusively as a screenwriter. I didn't come to the novel writing until the last few years. And I had no idea how we were going to pull this off. But we talked about it. We knew the direction we wanted to go, and she actually just had one request, and that was that she wanted to write the first part of the book.
2 chapters, that's all I asked. 2 chapters.
Well, tell them why.
Well, I'm very character-driven, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get into any collaborative book unless I knew who the character was and how they thought. And so when I got the 2 chapters written, I knew Hannah, I knew her brother, and I knew Kirov. So then I could just turn it over to him.
What we did was we traded sections of the book back and forth. She would write a big section, then it would be my turn to write another section, and we would each edit each other's work. And that was an interesting process in and of itself. And the way I've been describing is that we had to learn to be as ruthless with each other as we each are with ourselves. And what that means is that we each take our work very seriously. We do a lot of writing and rewriting, and if something's not working, we cut it or change it or rewrite it entirely. And we found ourselves in a position of reading the others, and when we came across something we felt wasn't working, we were tap dancing around it at first. We didn't want to hurt the other's feelings.
We're family.
So if it was my own work and I saw something that wasn't working, I wouldn't hesitate to just tear it out and not even think twice about it. But since she wrote it, I didn't want to do that. And she didn't want to do it with mine. And we found out that eventually that the only way the book was going to be as good as we thought it could be was to be as honest and brutal as we each are with our own work. And it ended up working great because we both go through that process on our own. It was fascinating to look at the others and tell them this isn't working for me, and if we had a good reason why, we could make the others see it, then we could come to an answer together. And almost something clicked after about, well, she's often said after chapter 5.
Chapter 5, that was it.
And we went back and did the first 5 chapters, so you don't think that the first 5 chapters are terrible. But we worked through the rest of the book, and it turned out to be a very easy collaboration after that, once we came to that realization.
Yeah, it really did. You just have to put your ego in the refrigerator for a little while and just think about the book.
And that was it. The story was always king. We always knew that we had an idea that we were happy with, and like all the stories that we write, we want it to be as good as it was when we first had that spark of inspiration. And we felt we had that. As we moved through it, it was really so exciting to get a big chunk of pages from her and read them, and I would come to the end of them. And I was always so disappointed when I got to the end, because I wanted to read more. I wanted to see what happened next. And then, of course, I realized I had to write what was next. But that was okay, too. It was just really, really neat. I suddenly had a story I was even more excited about than I had been before. And then I could use that as a launching point for my writing. And so it was inspirational as I moved through the story to finally to see the stakes ratcheted up with each new section of book that I got from her. And it was fun for me to take a character maybe that she created on page 25 and do something on page 200 that she never imagined that they could do. And to surprise her like I'm hoping I surprise the readers and get that feedback as I'm writing the book. I don't have to wait 2 years down the road and to come to events like this to hear, whether what I wrote worked for the reader or not. I could kind of hear it almost right away. And it was really an interesting process, something I've never experienced before in my screenwriting or my novel writing.
Of course, I'd call him and I'd say, I didn't think you'd do that. Oh my gosh, can we make it work? And it happened a lot.
And the answer was, of course, it always works. But eventually.
Eventually.
But we were so enthused by the process by the time we got finished with this book that we were already halfway through our next book together. We just turned it in a few weeks ago. And we're anxious to hear the initial reaction has been really great, and we're gratified by that. And we're just very enthused as we move forward into this next book. And if anything, the process has gotten easier than it was the first time. We didn't have to take that initial period to find that rhythm that we eventually got with Silent Thunder. And we're moving through it, and it's just a really exciting process.
Right. And Roy says that he thinks that the second book will be even better than Silent Thunder, but I don't know. I love Silent Thunder. I love Hannah. And I love Kiro. And boy, his scenes were so explosive, and the twists were so great in that book. But we'll see next summer.
And we think we will revisit these characters. Our editor, when we announced that we were going to do a second book, one of the first questions our editor had was it going to have these 2 characters again? And it doesn't. It has several new characters that we're really, really fond of already. But these 2 characters I'm thrilled with, and I think we will revisit at some point. There's certainly more stories to be told with them, but I'm very happy with Silent Thunder. Well, before we turn over to questions, I thought this is the first time that she's been on a book tour in 10 years. This is a very, very rare thing for her.
Thank you.
And I want to thank the Margaret Mitchell House and all the great people we've met here tonight for hosting this event. This is really an amazing
Warm
venue.
and wonderful.
It is, totally. It's an incredible venue. Yes, please. You guys are so lucky to have a venue like this, because this is just amazing. I'm just blown away by this whole atmosphere. This is the launch party. This is the launch party for the book. The book just came out today, and we're starting this really kicks off our tour. We do a signing in the Atlanta area tomorrow, and then we head off to New York and Connecticut and head straight across the country all the way to Los Angeles. And I don't think I will find a better venue than we have here tonight. This is really, really fantastic. So I just want to thank everybody for that, first of all. But since this is such a rare occasion for her to tour, I thought I'd take the opportunity to answer a lot of the questions that I always hear about her writing, how she got her start. So, she was quoted in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about a week and a half ago. I don't know if you saw it, that she was going to say a couple words and turn the whole thing over to me tonight. Well, that isn't going to happen. So sorry. So I'm going to ask you. What made you start the whole writing process? You talked about the empty nest syndrome, and what made you, even before that, I know that you've been you were just a great reader ever since I could remember. And what about being a storyteller appealed to you? When you wanted to do something else with your life, when my sister and I were in high school, what made you turn to writing?
Well, it takes you away from everything. And I always had a passion for it, even when I was in high school. And then I was married, and I had 2 children. Imagine that. And then when they were in high school, I suddenly realized they weren't going to be around for very long. But I was wrong. That's a very good thing. And so I started to write and started to have a career of my own. I can remember writing at Eastern Airlines in the lounge with my yellow pad. I can remember in the sitting at cars while my children were in rehearsals on my yellow pad and writing. It was a hobby that became a passion. What can I say?
You started off writing romance at first, and you became a best-selling romance author within just a few years of starting the whole process. What made you want to switch midstream into writing thrillers?
I was really growing. I'm not saying that romances actually stifle you. They don't. But it's hard to have a lot of twists in them because you have to concentrate on the emotion. So as I learned my craft, I went on to historicals, and then I went on to suspense. And suspense is just so much fun. Oh, you can actually develop the characters, and at the same time, you can develop the twists, and that's a kick.
So you have a lot of your readers. I know as soon as you finish every Eve Duncan book, I know you get tons of email from readers wanting to know when the next one is. Always. Well, first of all, when is the next Eve Duncan book? You just came out with one with Quicksand.
It'll probably be next year. Eve Duncan she's a difficult character because of her background. She has a tragic background. I never write an Eve Duncan book unless I've got a very fresh idea. It's not fair to the reader.
And I know you have there's a character that has a search and rescue dog. There's Sarah Patrick and her dog Monty, who's appeared in several of your books, but she hasn't been in one in years, if I'm not mistaken. When will we may see her again? I know you get a lot of email about her.
Well, Sarah won't be center stage, but I think you'll probably be surprised in October. And
There's
Monty's
a tip. There's
around
exclusive
too.
for you all.
Because that's one of the surprises. I hate giving away surprises, and I just did it.
So, shh, don't tell me. And while on the subject of dogs, I do have to mention we have a very special visitor here tonight. We got caught in horrendous traffic coming here tonight, and we meant to make a stop on the way to drop off my dog, who I brought here from California. We got caught in such horrible traffic, we knew we wouldn't be able to stop off and get here in time. So we called the people here and said, would it be a problem if I brought my pug? And they were so warm and so wonderful about it. And
we were so relieved.
He has flown 61 times in the last 6 years, and I'm happy to say he's right there in the back. That is Jerry. And he's available for pets after the program, believe me. But do you have a favorite among your characters? You have so many characters who you weave in and out through your books, even supporting characters who go in and out of book series that really have no other relation to each other. Do you have any that are personal favorites of yours?
Well, I love Eve, of course. I mean, she's practically my sister. Though, boy, I really wouldn't like her tragedies. I love Eve. It's impossible to choose a favorite character. It's like choosing between you and Tam.
That's not a problem as far as I see. Okay, your readers have also a very strong affection for your male characters.
Oh, yes.
Your romantic interests in them. Do you have any favorites among them?
Oh, I don't know. I love Galen. Galen he's wicked enough and mischievous enough to please my soul. I really don't like heroes that are too good. I like them to have faults. But I really don't mind them having some superhero qualities, too. So you'll see that in a lot in my books.
It's been a long time since we've seen Sean Galen in one of your books. Do you have any plans to bring him back? I know you get a lot of call for him, too.
He has a baby. He's got to take care of that baby right now. But I was just thinking the other day that, you know, if somebody kidnapped the baby.
You heard it here first.
But nothing would happen to the baby, okay? Nothing.
Okay, well, I think we've about run our course here, but I've been told that we should turn this over to Q&A because I know she gets tons of questions on her email, and I hope you guys have some too that we can talk about.
What about him?
Okay.
Q&A.
Okay, well, let me just tell you a little about myself. I know a lot of you don't know who I am. I've actually been writing almost as long as she has, believe it or not. But the first 10 years, I worked exclusively as a screenwriter. I actually wrote a screenplay in college. My college screenwriting professor is here, by the way, right over there. And while I'm talking about teachers, a teacher who really gave me so much inspiration and encouragement at a time that I needed it most is also here. My high school English and journalism teacher, Wanda Patterson, is right over here too. These people are why I'm up here tonight. So teachers are so important to us, and I know that, think of that every day. But I wrote a screenplay in college that I entered into a contest that Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and George Lucas, Francis Coppola, all were on the Board of Governors on. And I won first place in the country. And things happened very quickly for me after that. I won a car, within 6 weeks, I won a car in the contest. I had a studio deal. I had suddenly had my apartment in Brentwood, an office in MGM, and I was a working screenwriter in LA. And I worked exclusively as a screenwriter for 10 years, many times being paid lots of money for writing films that never got made, as often happens in Hollywood. And that's when I had a couple that did, a couple of TV cable movies that were made, including one, Murder 101, with Pierce Brosnan, that still shows up on TBS all the time. And I also knew I wanted to write books, I decided. I got tired of writing scripts that were on studio shelves, never seen by anyone. Excuse me. But so I decided to start writing books. And one of my screenplays that I wrote for Warner Brothers was called The Answer Man. And it was one that I went through tons of development on and wrote draft after draft after draft, and eventually they didn't make it. This time I negotiated a clause that the rights would revert back to me after a certain, and so I owned the rights outright. I decided this would make a pretty good book, and so I decided to write it as my first novel. And that went well, and I wrote another and another one after that. And so I knew that I always would want to write screenplays, books as well as screenplays, and that's what I've been doing. So my mother and I really didn't think about collaborating until I started writing books. And that's when, after probably 7 or 8 years of writing novels, I came up with this idea, the kernel of an idea for Silent Thunder that we thought we could do something with. And like I said, that's gone really well, and I'll continue to write my own books, my own screenplays, but I look forward to also writing books with this, New York Times bestselling author in the family that I happen to have here. That's been just a lot of fun and really a source of refreshment for my other writing. And that's my story.
We're going to try to write at least one together a year because they were such great fun. And yes, we will always have our own careers because that's what we are. But I think when you read this book, you'll realize that you're getting the best of me and the best of Roy. And it's great fun.
So now if you have any questions at all, I see some from the Eastern Airlines contingent immediately.
Okay, would you identify who you want who you're addressing the?
I was just going to say, before you start the Q&A, you should tell us about Tamara's role.
Tamara is my research assistant, and she helps enormously. I can call her at any time. And what was the last one? Rasputin, Tamara? Something. Anyway, yes, I can call her at any time out of the blue, and she's right there for me.
In the blue, there?
I want to know, how long did it take you to collaborate on this book to get it from beginning to today?
It was about 2 years.
It was about 2 years. We worked on it 2 years. Of course, a lot of it was research. Roy did an enormous amount of research on it because he had to do the research. I'm not so good at submarines.
And some of the research just happened as just a lucky accident. I travel a lot, and my travel does definitely inform my writing, and it informs this book. There's actually a very, very key plot element that came about only after I went to the Czech Republic a couple of years ago. And I happened to meet someone who served on several nuclear subs when I was in Poland. And so I was able to talk to someone who was head of a Soviet fleet of submarines and talk to someone who served on several U.S. submarines. And you just never know where you're going to find sources that are really going to help bring a book to life. And so it was really interesting for me. It wasn't like drudgery to research. Someone was asking Tam just a little while ago if she does research for my books. No, because I love the research process. Because usually I'm writing books about things that I'm keenly interested in. So it's really great to discover things. And I never know what plot elements or characters are going to come out of the research for me. Although a lot of the stuff I know that Tam supplies for Mom does exactly the same thing for her. You just never know where you're going to get inspiration, but lots of times it's from the research that you do.
I'm very excited about the concept of a mother and son writing together. I'm curious to know, what is your writing style? How do they differ? Or are you so much alike that you write in the same style?
We're alike and we're different. That's it. Actually, both of us move our books by dialogue, and that helps. And naturally, he does because he's also a screenwriter, so that helps. But our viewpoints are quite often different. He can pull in a quirky character out of the blue that is absolutely wonderful, and I wouldn't think of it. On the other hand, I can be very intense. So we actually had to balance the two.
And I also, as a screenwriter, I have gotten into the habit of writing visually. You know, and I'm a big fan of the big set piece, the big action set piece, which you'll find a few of in Silent Thunder. And it was interesting also to find, as far as pacing goes, finding as a screenwriter, if you notice when you see movies, there's very seldom you see a scene that lasts over 2 minutes. It's very rare that you see that. That's only 2 pages of formatted screenplay, which is, you know, maybe a page of novel writing. And most screenplays are made up by many, many short scenes. And I tend to write that in novels. My scenes tend to be very short, but there are a lot of them, I think, which helps give a sense of momentum. There are other ways to get momentum in a book, but that's the way I do it. And she doesn't tend to write that way. She tends to write longer scenes, but have a lot more action within each of them. But when you see all those put together in a book, there has to be some adjustments made, because it's ridiculous to see, 30 rat-a-tat short scenes and then get and see, 8
hills and valleys.
That's right, and you have to place those hills and valleys. And so maybe you have, 6 rat-a-tat scenes, a long one, 5 or 6 more really fast scenes, and then another couple long ones. And so you develop a pace, and we found a pace that worked for both of our styles. And that was a part of the adjustment of working with a collaborator. We both have different styles in that sense, but very much the voice is very similar, I think, in our books.
Right, and actually, when we were doing it, we would think of it from the character's point of view. The voice had to be from the character's point of view, and it had to be consistent. So we'd say, okay, would he have said that? Or when I had control of the character, would he have said it this way? Or no? There was a lot of crossing out on both of our parts.
So by the end of the book, even the characters that the other had created, we each felt ownership in.
Yes, we did.
So
these are our characters, and I think because of the work that we did on them, I think they became richer and deeper.
Did your daughter follow in your footsteps in the writing?
No.
She chose a different
Yes, she chose a different life, and as I said, she does wonderful research for me.
May I ask what authors inspired you guys to write?
Oh. Well, when I was 7, my first book that I read was Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. And, that was an adventurous book, and it had some elements of suspense in it, too. Other than that, I'm an avid reader, so you name an author, and I've read.
My major inspiration is so old school. It's the Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes stories. I've written a couple of books with a paranormal debunker named Joe Bailey. And he's a detective, and when there are crimes caused by what appears to be supernatural, in his daily life he debunks phony fortune tellers and stuff, but when there's a crime that appears to be caused by paranormal means, he's brought in to figure out what really happened. And in a sense, that's what Hound of the Baskervilles was. Very few people made that connection, but all the Sherlock Holmes books to me are just a great inspiration. I was a huge Sherlock Holmes fan growing up, and it's been fun to reread those books at different points in my life and to see different things. So I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, and they continue to inspire me.
He's so classic.
Where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
I actually moved here when I was 14, and I went to high school, Sprayberry High School in Marietta, and went to college at Georgia State University, and where I attended the film program there.
You said earlier that you felt like you wanted to write the first 2 chapters so that you could get to know the characters. I'm wondering, in future collaborations, if
I don't want to change. I don't know how I'd get to know the characters. I guess I'd have to stumble around a little bit.
The second book we did exactly the same way. She wrote everything. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. But
I'm his mother, okay?
Can I ask almost on the heels of that question, because you said before that you write the first 5 chapters and surprise each other as you go along. Do you not have any sort of sense of where you're going and an outline beforehand, or do you literally write chapter after chapter?
We have a vague idea where we're going, but because both of us write by the seat of our pants, once the characters are established, there's no telling where those books are going to go. And that's part of the fun of it, because he hands me 3 chapters, and I thought, I didn't know it was going to go here. How am I going to pull this one out? And then I write another 3 and hand it back to him.
For Silent Thunder, we pretty much knew what was going to happen in the last 30 pages or so. There's a major sequence in this book.
That's it.
And we pretty much knew where we were headed. We weren't quite sure how we were going to get there. And obviously there was 1,000 ways it could have gotten there. And we had no idea until we were actually in the thick of it. So at least we had a target we were shooting for.
After your collaboration, did either or both of you take away anything from it that may, even in a subtle way, change the way you write, individually in the future? Did you learn from each other in any sense that, for instance, you may stretch out your little pieces or you may shorten yours, and anything like that come about that you can think of at this point?
I think that we both learned. I think we both learned from any process. Will we change the way we write on our own? Perhaps some. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the books that we write together are always going to be quite a bit different than the books that we each write individually, because we have developed a certain style and a certain way of working. But on the books I write myself, yeah, I could already seen a little bit. I do spend a little bit more time getting in the characters' heads. As a screenwriter, of course, you never can do that unless you resort to a cheesy voiceover or something. And obviously, as a novelist, I've done that quite a bit. But I probably look for a few more places where I might be able to do that to let the reader inside the characters a little bit more than I might have before. But still, maybe not to the extent that I might in the books that we do together, because we developed a slightly different style.
And perhaps Roy is really good on twists, and he develops them, and then all of a sudden they hit you. I might spend more time trying to do that.
Just that really done consider it. How do you manage to put it here?
Okay.
How did you manage to all your characters play?
Well,
Because they overlap and I, as a reader, can go throughout.
well, they're my family, So cousin Megan comes in, but I know where she is and where she comes from. No, they're all my family. I can keep them straight. Though sometimes I admit that when I have several Johns in a book, I might spell the name wrong. I did the last book, and I had to go back and change it from John to Jon from John. So I'm definitely not perfect.
Do you find, Mr. Hansen, that over the years your readers have responded better to characters you developed from real-life people or from characters you met here as you were writing? Or do you even know?
I have no idea. I'm just a storyteller, and when I'm writing, I'm in my own world. Have I borrowed from real-life characters? Perhaps, but I'm never aware of it. By chapter 3, if those characters aren't alive for me, I throw the book away.
Well, I must say in Silent Thunder there is a character in the book that's inspired somewhat by a character, a real-life person I know, and that's my wife, Lisa. there's a little submarine, this trusty sub called Lisa, which of course stands for Lateral Intake Submersible Application. So when you read that, think of my wife, if you would.
And I howled when he sent me those pages.
What do you feel is more important to you, character development or plot?
Well, both. Naturally, a strong plot is absolutely essential. But you're not going to care about the plot unless you care about those characters. So you have to have a balance.
What very often attracts me to a book is the plot, but what keeps me riveted throughout very often is the characters. So obviously both are important. I tend to think of plot first when I'm trying to think of a book to write, and I try and think of a story and a plot line that's going to would grab me as a reader and grabs me as a writer. And then once I've decided that, then of course it's my job to come up with characters that act as our guide through this story, and make the reader want to stick around and be excited and thrilled by what they read.
I look at the New York Times bestseller list and I see that you have a new book out. You know, I go good. Go out, get that. Both of you, who would you say gets your juices going as far as, ooh, they have a new book, I'm going to not write today and I'm going to read today instead?
Well, how about my son? Oh, I like so many. I think that Dean Koontz is a terrific storyteller. I'd stop for him. In fact, I think I've got Good Guy in my luggage that I haven't read yet. I have many friends in the business. Sandra Brown, Catherine Coulter, Linda Howard. They're all fine, fine writers, and I love to read them.
I like Michael Chabon a lot. I'm right now working my way, this is so repetitive, but I'm working my way through this brilliant 3-volume Sherlock Holmes annotated set that Klinghoffer did a couple years ago, where you read through it and every aspect is annotated. Someone can't mention the name of a tobacco shop without them telling you a whole paragraph about what it's about. It's kind of like on the DVDs where you watch the commentary to see all this stuff. It's the book version of that. And I've been going through this for about a year now, and I'm still not more than a third of the way because I have to stop and read about every tobacco shop and every. It was awesome. It was awesome for a Sherlock Holmes geek like me. It's totally awesome. But that's been my greatest reading experience for the last over a year now.
By the way, all three of the friends that you mentioned have books coming out in August. And Linda Howard just has one out now, and so is Catherine Coulter and Sandra Brown is coming out.
What's Linda's?
Death Angel just came out.
It just came out? Oh.
Yeah, it's Catherine Coulter's, and Sandra Brown's is in August, and it's, sorry, I can't remember.
I've got to run out and get Linda's. We were looking at her cover up in New York about 3 months ago.
It's very different for her.
And what about the cover? Is the lady still upside down?
I'm impressed you had all these on tap like that.
If you're a voracious reader, you know, your mom falls in that category. I have read,
Sorry.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Hansen, I've read almost everything that you have written. The problem I find is sometimes I get confused. I've read this one, what's the story of the line about. Do you or do you have plans to create a companionship book that gives a brief synopsis of each of the books and the storyline?
Actually, I've been working on the website to try to do that. It's very complicated when you've written as many books as I have. I don't even remember how they're interwoven, some of them. I'm talking about the early Love Sweps, where sometimes I had a Sedicon country, and so, would that be in that particular category, even though there's no characters there? I don't know. I'm working on it. I really am.
So you both do your writing on computers now?
Oh, yes.
You don't ever use your pad?
No, my legal pad has gone bye-bye, except, when I'm taking notes.
Outlining for me, I still do longhand. It's interesting to write. It's easier for me to outline longhand, but once I'm actually writing, the computer is the way to go. Very much of Silent Thunder actually was written in a Barnes & Noble cafe near where I live. Just when I want to get out of the house, that's where I went, and that's where most of my part was written.
We have time for maybe three more questions, but I was remiss because I didn't make a little important announcement. I see a few suitcases. If you have more than 5 books to get signed, please go to the back of the line as a courtesy to those who just have a couple. Okay, thank you. And how about 3 more questions?
3 more
Okay.
questions.
Get your hand way up. I'm sorry. But
I wish. You know how hard Hollywood is.
I do know. Yeah, this one actually, I haven't even shown this to my film agent yet, but I will now. And it's a very cinematic type of book, so I think that it has a chance. Several of her titles have actually been optioned for movies in the last few years, and it still hasn't happened. But I know how hard it is to get anything through the system, but I'm sure it will happen for her, and I think it could very well happen for us.
I hope it does. It would be great if our book.
I also, so sorry, this is interruption, but if you did buy the books here, and this is the very, very first day you could buy Silent Thunder anywhere on the planet. But if you bought Silent Thunder here, you could be in the line if you have more than 5 books. If they're all,
If you have 15 or 20, yeah. 15 or 20 books, you get in line. Do you have any others? Well, thank you all very much. Oh, we got one more.
One more question. They just appear out of the blue, all of a sudden. No rhyme or reason. You start with the kernel of an idea and you say, what kind of character can I have that would make that kernel of an idea come true?
all these new characters.
Yes.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank
This has
you.
been so great. Really appreciate it.